So welcome everyone to the Governance and Operations Committee meeting of December 11, 2023. Just to note, members of the public can be present in the council committee room during the meeting. And also please note that the webinar will be recorded and published to the city's YouTube site. So today we have a couple of delegations with us. Our first one today is Matthew Stanley and Sarah Benson-Lord. And they are here to do a presentation on the Return to Prominence project at the Trail Memorial Center. Welcome.
Thank you.
I'll let you guys take it from here.
Okay. I think everybody is set up. Matt Stanley, I'm a principal architect for SMA. We're based in Nelson, but I've done a lot of projects here in Trail, and a big one for the city of Trail, about 2017. I really enjoy the city. I really enjoy being with the city. It's great to be here. Today we're talking about a project that is about reinvesting into a community asset that is languishing. How do we go about sort of revitalizing the important community building? And we're talking about Trail here. I will read from parts of the presentation today. We have 45 minutes, so we're trying to put it all in 45 minutes. Okay. So we are looking at the Trail Memorial Center, and we're talking about it as a return to prominence for an evolving community. As I said, this is a building that is in some ways languishing, and this is a project that's been a long time coming. This is been issues with this building that have been discussed going way back to 2013 in the City of Trail Recreation and Parks Master Plan. And we're starting to look very closely at those items and trying to revitalize this building, make it valuable and meaningful to the community. It has been historically one of the most valuable and meaningful buildings in this community, and it can be. This is a schematic design for the main entryway of the building and the public gathering areas and the common areas and the circulation areas.
Oh, we don't. Okay.
So I want to be clear that we're not looking at the arena space proper. We're not looking at the kids rink. We're not looking at the gymnasium or the Victoria View Room. We're looking at all the spaces in between. And so while all those important program spaces, they inform what we're doing today. But what we're looking at today is the sort of the public gathering and the circulation spaces and all those spaces that sort of galvanize the larger program spaces within. The first thing we do when we're looking at this is that we sort of establish the prominence of the building, the historical prominence of the building. And in many, many ways, it's a bit of a cliche to say this, but it's very true with this building, is that it's a community building that has actually built the community. From its opening ceremony in 1949 until recent times, the Trail Memorial Center has held a place of prominence in the city, not only as a significant architectural achievement. When it was built, it was quite an architectural feat. The construction photos are amazing, but also as a valuable community amenity. For almost 75 years, this building has been home to championship hockey teams, community and regional events, and the many forms of organized sport and cultural events that have galvanized this community in a celebration of their neighbors, their friends, their families. I think it's fair to say that perhaps no other building in the city tells the story of Trail as much as this building does. There's been no other building in the city that has sort of brought the community together. This is a quote at the bottom from the City of Trail Parks and Recreation Master Plan. And it says it quite succinctly that the Trail Memorial Center is an iconic city landmark that has been invaluable in contributing to the leisure needs of citizens and to the social fabric of the community. The center continues to be a vital recreation resource in the community. And this is the important part, and this is why we're here today. But it is dated, it's underutilized, and it's unsuited to many current and projected future community needs. And this is going back to 2013 when this is highlighted in the community, and we need to look at the investment. Fast forward to today, and this is what we're looking at when we're in the circulation spaces, the common spaces, the sort of community spaces within the building, and we're looking at the existing deficiencies within the building. And our study area on the left-hand side, this is the floor plan where you can see my cursor on your screen or on your screens. This is the main arena. This is the kids' rink. This is the gymnasium. And then this is the Victoria View Room. As I said at the beginning, our study areas, all that stuff in between all of those program spaces. And we start out by looking at some of the deficiencies here, and we're looking at it through the lens of the Recreation Master Plan that was developed in 2013. The challenges confronting the Trail Memorial Center, as noted in the master plan, are exemplified in the area of study. And these challenges entail dated and underutilized and abandoned spaces in the building. You can see that in the photos here. These photos were taken. This includes a lot of spaces that have been left vacant since the opening of the Aquatic Center and the Riverfront Center. And so it's important that we now start to look back at this place where people have vacated and said, what do we do with these spaces? The other deficiencies that are raised in the master plan under B here are uninviting environments and common areas that are characterized by a lack of visual connectivity, a lack of light, and a lack of human presence. And it's very true. When we're in the building, we can feel that, unless it's a hockey game or something like that. And then C is a financial strain due to the lack of revenue generated space and potentially in the building. And these are a couple quotes from the master plan. It says, there are challenges that are confronting the center, but there are also opportunities to redefine the building and turn it to its prominence in the community. Significant action is required to address the challenges of the Trail Memorial Center. The center must reinvent itself and become more inviting and relevant. And I think that that's important. Like, those are bold statements. They're not, they're saying that, you know, we can't fix this building with small little projects here and there. We need to look at this building as a whole and how it's working, and we need to take some bold moves and some bold action in order to make this building relevant to the community. When we're looking at existing deficiencies of the building, we can't ignore also the issue of access in the front entrance to the building. This isn't something that is explicitly discussed in the master plan, but it is something that is actually one of the very obvious deficiencies with how the building is relating to the city and relating to the community. And it's that the access to the building is hidden and it's disconnected and it's unwelcoming. And so at the very core of this issue is, Highway 3B is effectively severing the building from the downtown core. And you can see that in this diagram here, which is a bigger ground, sort of a bigger ground drawing of the downtown trail. And we can see how the highway severs, especially pedestrian, but even vehicular access into the building. It acts as a barrier between the building and the city of Trail. And then the other issue that we're highlighting here with this little triangle, this little red triangle, is the misalignment between the building's primary entry doors with the city's urban grid of avenues and streets and sidewalks. And so some of the issues surrounding Highway 3B, I would say, are at a much broader urban design scale than what we can look at right now. But there are many things that we can do immediately with regards to the front entry to make it more welcoming, more visible, and to give it a better sense of connection to the downtown. These are views on the right-hand side of just approaching the building. You can see this isn't what we expect out of a modern recreational facility when you're approaching the front entry from Bay Avenue. Here, you can't even see the doors. As you're approaching the doors, you're walking along the brick wall. The scale of the entry seems to be out of step with what we expect from modern recreational facilities. So, this image here is in fact just black glass looking into what is closed off old ticket booths. And I think at one time it used to be tourist information center. It's currently abandoned space that is basically just blackened off from the sidewalk. And so this is a very unwelcoming space, not a very inviting sense of arrival to it. So these are some of the things that we want to look at in our design proposal. The next series of slides will look at what I call the 5 big moves where we're addressing those deficiencies. And those deficiencies, you know, they're mostly speaking about spaces that are abandoned, spaces that are not connected to each other. There's no light, there's no daylight, there's no visual connectivity, there's a lack of human presence, and also deficiencies with regards to the main entry into the building. So this first, that's the first big move. The first big move is about the scale of the space that we're talking about. And on the left-hand side of the next few slides is the proposed floor plan. In the top right, we have these schematic diagrams that show schematically what we're talking about. And we'll do this. And then on the bottom right, we have a series of photos, precedent images of other projects across Canada, some not in Canada, that are other recreational facilities that help to exemplify some of the ideas we'll talk about on each slide. And so this first one is about the scale of the space that we're talking about. And this first big move is to restore and reestablish the center's prominence as a social and leisure hub for the community. And in the proposed floor plan on the left-hand side here, the public gathering and common areas of the Trail Memorial Center, which include the entry hall here at the front doors, the memorial lounge up here in the sort of the core of the space, the public washrooms and the circulation spaces and display spaces. They are at a scale in the proposed design that is suitable and expected of a modern recreational facility. So these spaces are inviting, they're user-friendly, they're accessible and light. These are the spaces where the community and various user groups can mingle and share stories. These are the spaces within the facility where people interact and engage with one another beyond their particular program spaces. These are the spaces that build community. And so that's what we're talking about when we're looking at the core of this building and the circulation spaces and the gathering spaces. This is where people cross paths. This is where a hockey player in the main arena is going to cross paths with one of the kids playing at the kids' league. This is where a neighbor who's got a birthday in the McIntyre room will cross paths with somebody who's playing pickleball in the gymnasium. These are the spaces that we want to encourage the sort of community building and to act as the space that actually connects all the different program spaces within the building. And when we're looking at that, we want it to be at a scale that we expect from a modern recreation facility. In the top right here, this small orange rectangle is what I would describe as the current space within the building that serves that function. This is the red floor room or the Hall of Memories. In the right-hand side, we're expanding that rectangle by removing a lot of walls, dealing with several. Oh, there it is. Break.
Yeah, I know, I think it's going to function.
Oh, okay, I'll keep moving.
Yeah.
If I'm spending too long on one slide, it'll tell me. Is that this part in the way
No.
for anybody?
No.
Okay. And so we're looking at dealing with some of the abandoned spaces, blowing out some walls, and giving this a scale that feels inviting and welcoming to the community. And in the bottom right, we see images, some of those are recreational facilities in Canada that have these kinds of spaces that feel welcoming, light, and inviting to community members, for people in the building to cross paths and share stories. So the first big move is about the scale of the space that we're looking at. The next big move is to open up the sight lines between the various program spaces in the building. And this is done to establish visual connections and engaging common areas. And so when we open up the sight lines from the entry hall as you come into the building You can see into the main throat of the building here. By opening up that sight line between program spaces, between the memorial lounge here into the arena, in the top right, we can see a section of how that may feel. And we'll look at some renderings later too, or into the kids rink or into the gymnasium, and vice versa, from those spaces back into the circulation spaces in the common areas of the building. We are developing spaces that feel connected to each other and not cut off from each other. We're developing spaces that feel very vital because you see action and you see people moving in all of those spaces. By nature of that treatment, the building feels like it's being used more. And they get to share life with each other. We're eliminating the sense of sort of small, dark spaces that are disconnected from each other. We have the spaces so that we can see into the various children's spaces. And on the bottom right-hand side, you can see photos of recreational facilities where they do that with glass, opening up the circulation spaces into the main program spaces that they do. The other thing that this does, importantly, is that it raises the general awareness of what's going on in those spaces and the spaces that are available to the general public. So if I'm coming now to this building and I'm going to that cup of tea at the Memorial Lounge, I will see into the gymnasium and I will see what they are doing in the gym. And I may say to myself, hey, I might want to go and use that gym. Right now, when you go into the building, it's very difficult to even find the gym or let alone see into the gym. Same thing with the kids room. And so by opening up the sight lines between those program spaces, we raise the general awareness of what is available in the building, which could potentially increase user rates. That's big move number 2. Big move number 3 is about celebrating the hard work of champions. It's about celebrating the remarkable history of the community. And I'll let Sarah talk for a little bit here. I'll just sort of introduce the concept. And Sarah's been great in guiding this, obviously. But we want to use the place of commemoration, the place of display for history and celebration, to integrate it within the overall spaces of the design, and not to sort of segregate it off into one space and say, this is where we're going to celebrate the history of the building. The Hall of Memories, which is currently about 125 linear feet, a fairly busy display space, feels somewhat disconnected from the other program spaces in the building. And so the proposal here is to expand the amount of available real estate, but also to integrate that into all of the common spaces and circulation of the building. So when you're coming into the building at the doors, this first space is taking over that sort of cordoned off ticket booth area that is currently an enclosed black box, and turning that into an indoor-outdoor display space, potentially for large cultural objects, where you would interact with it and see it from the inside of the building, but also the outside of the building. It's a wonderful way for the building to start engaging to the exterior, to the general public sidewalk. Number 2 is something that we're looking at, large display surfaces at ramps, that we can start to think about things like guardrails and walls as also being wonderful areas for armatures for display. Number 3 is sort of a gallery space for plinths and display surface that could be seasonal displays that are evolving or themed. And then number 5 is display space that is wrapping the service core of the building and is facing into the Memorial Lounge and facing into the seating area that would look into the kids' rink and into the gym as well. And so the concept here is that we have very sort of engaging display space that is interwoven into the architecture. Would you like to add anything?
I would, and this is a new-ish council who may not have the background into the origins of the Sports Hall of Memories, which has been around since 1980. For any of you longtime trail residents who may remember Alan Tognati, he founded this feature. He was a member of council at the time and founded this feature as a place to commemorate trails' many sporting successes. He was curator and collections manager at the Colombo Lodge. So as he was collecting Italian material, he also became sort of the collector of sports things. Even though we had a very young museum at the time, he became that person. Council eventually decided at the time to put the responsibility of both collecting and collections management to the Trail Historical Society, which had been well established by then. So the Trail Historical Society has been overseeing those cases since that time. So it's as old as me. 22 cases over time started to build up. Right now, all sports related. In 2003, the Historical Society underwent a relatively large for the time refurbishment, painting of the cases, new lights, which are now completely obsolete. But of course, you'll all know in 2017, we started pulling all the good stuff out, and that it now lives in the sports gallery at the museum. That year also, the city and the Historical Society signed a memorandum of understanding, which formalized the new relationship, no longer having staff, but the collections and museum operations would fall to the City of Trail. The Historical Society still retains ownership of every artifact and textual record photograph that existed before, that exists now. We work on behalf of the Trail Historical Society now in the museum. So that's important to remember. The MOU also states that the city and the Historical Society will collaborate for a shared vision for the Sports Hall of Memories, which is why I'm involved in this as a representative for the Historical Society and also the collections. So I wanted to make that clear. We very much recognize there's an enduring popularity of those cases. I would bet still more people go into that space and look at the collection that's on exhibit there than come into the museum right now. For whatever reason, it's there, they're there. But it's important to note that the key pieces are no longer there anymore. We haven't had the time, certainly as a staff, to dedicate to updating those cases quite yet. In 2019, we worked really closely with the Historical Society to help actually shift the vision, and it was hoped we would get in front of council at the time to see a shift from a Hall of Memories to maybe something more of a Hall of Excellence. We hear a lot from local groups who wish that they could have their daughter's hockey team, exhibit their achievements of the year. The mandate right now is strictly historical, and we'd like to see that shift. There is nowhere in the city, aside from a space like this, where contemporary achievements can be displayed. And that's where the Historical Society would actually like to take it. We're interpreting and we're doing here. Right now, to me, in my professional opinion, those cases are acting as open storage. It's a lot to look at. There's not a lot of interpretation. And right now, the pieces that were removed, the stuff we put back in, isn't necessarily doing what we wanted it to do. The lighting, as I said, is obsolete. We've had to remove some of our original things like jerseys that are being damaged by both the fluorescent lights that are up above and the just regular lighting that's in the cases. During the Victoria View Room renovation, a whole bank of wiring from the left bank of cases was removed. So that lighting is actually not even in existence right now, which is why if you go in there, those are off. There's no wiring anywhere to be had. The Historical Society is keen to be involved in this and keen to retain a few heritage pieces. They're also cognizant of the popularity of the space. Would very much appreciate the opportunity to go out to the public and just gauge the temperature. What sort of things would you like to see? We want to make sure we're in alignment with what the community would want as well. We don't want to just make any changes in a space that people really, really cherish. So there would be hopefully some opportunity for some public input. We've already had, like I say, some interest from other organizations that not just sports. Citizen of the Year would be a great place to showcase, those types of achievements, as well as Sportsman of the Year. So that's why I'm here, and Matt has used a lot of historical imagery to help color his presentation. And we hope to get in front of council again with some public input data as well in the future, and excited to see a possible some professionalism injected into that space. We just know how popular it is. So yeah, we hope you support this.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. big move number 4 is about revenue generating spaces. And in the proposal, there would be 3 revenue generating spaces in the facility that would help bolster the financial viability of the center and increase its daily use traffic. Those are 2 things that are incredibly important. Obviously, the financial component of it is massively important, but increasing the daily use traffic in and out of the building is something that makes the building feel more vital and more alive, more welcoming, and frankly safer. When you know you're going into a building where there's a lot of people, you feel safe, you feel. The McIntyre room is already somewhat of a revenue generating space, and that would be enhanced in this proposal. And I see it really as a sort of a complement to the Victoria View Room, which is designed to support larger events such as weddings and conferences. The McIntyre Room is more about the sort of weekly events such as school groups or birthdays and those kind of things, smaller community style events. B is the Memorial Lounge, which would be open to the public throughout the day, generating a steady stream of income by offering coffee and light snacks to the user groups and the visitors to the building. And then during larger events such as a hockey game, there could be a broader menu and bar that would provide a really strong influx of revenue. And then up on the second floor of the building, there's a corner of the building that is just above the entryway here. And there's currently a few abandoned rooms that have been empty for quite some time. The proposal here is that on the second floor of the building, the Trail Memorial Center, the TMC co-working space will support local businesses and provide valuable revenue generating space for the facility. With shared facilities and office resources, small local businesses can reduce their overhead, collaborate with other professionals, share their expertise, and occupy a prominent downtown location with a spectacular view. The view from up in that space looking back toward downtown Trail is really quite beautiful. And so the proposal here is to have 3 revenue generating spaces within the building. The next big move is about connecting the building to the downtown. And this is dealing with 2 items. One of them is the south wall of the gymnasium and the Victoria View Room, which is highlighted in red here on this diagram. And then the other one is the actual entryway and the canopies into the entryway itself. So the first one is an interesting one. It's the south wall of the gymnasium and the Victoria View Room. Historically, these 2 historical photos on top here are really interesting. Historically, there's been an understanding for the need to better connect the facility to the downtown core. And we can see in these historical photos, these large billboards on that wall that is actually on access with Bay Avenue. And those billboards historically have given information about the building or announced events. And so there was this real understanding that there's a sight line down Bay Avenue toward the building that is looking at this large canvas. And so we know that this is an important sight line of the building. And is there an opportunity on that south wall of Victoria View Room and the gymnasium to do something that will actually engage with the downtown core? Something that would signal the building's presence. Perhaps there's a canvas for potential digital display, signage, murals, a dynamic cladding, engaging colors, and other strategies that will help to animate and announce and improve the entry into the building. Effectively, what we're trying to do is to visually and psychologically improve that connection between the downtown core and the building. If you remember some of the earlier slides, we showed that view. Right now is looking at a blank beige wall. The other item that historically was an interesting reference in the top right image, historically we can also see a much grander entry into the building. The original entry had a height and a scale that is actually more consistent with our modern day expectations for a front entry into a public recreational facility. The height of the original canopies signaled the entry from afar. It allowed more daylight into the building. It allowed views in and out of the building. And it was sort of a psychological signal to people arriving at the building that this building has an important civic function. Today we have awnings over the front entryway that create quite a low entry. It's quite dark. And it's at a scale that feels somewhat out of touch with what we expect when we go to a multi-location facility. So those are the 5 big moves. The first one being the scale of the space. The second one, opening up sight lines between the spaces. The third one being about the spaces of display and commemoration. The fourth one, remind myself, about revenue generation. And the fifth one about improving the connection and the access to the building. When we will look at what those all, how they all sort of manifest in 3 dimensions. When we look at the floor plan of what's being proposed, I'll just walk you through the front entryway here and the south entry wall is number 1. When you come into an entry hall here that has that 2-sided display into the entry hall and the sidewalk. Number 2 is benches and public seating and stair. We'll see that in 3 dimensions. Number 3 here is the memorial lounge. This is really the community space where neighbors can sit and have a coffee with each other. Number 4 is a cafe and bar that services the memorial lounge and the sort of anchor of the entire building. Number 5 is a gallery and display space up here at the north end. Number 6 being the McIntyre room. Number 7 is the washrooms. 8 changing rooms for the gym. 9 janitorial facility. 10 we have storage space, which allows the memorial lounge to be a flexible kind of space. So tables and chairs and things like that can be moved in and out of that memorial lounge for different events. Number 11 is the Victoria View room, which isn't really in the scope of this project, but a lot of what we're talking about relates to how these functions support one another. And number 12 is the gymnasium. We have a list of suggested functions and programs that where we can reinvent the use and increase daily use traffic within the gymnasium. Again, that's outside of the scope of this project, but the gymnasium is a space that is very underused in the building. And there's a lot of things that we can do to reinvent that space to increase its daily use. On level 2, we've got the co-working space, which includes offices, boardrooms, and kitchen. The next few slides, we look at what that floor plan feels like, what all these proposals feel like at different events in the building, because this is a community building that has an influx of a couple thousand people, and then on a day-to-day use, there might be 20 people going into that. And so we want to look at the proposal through the lens of these different events. This first slide is the good old hockey game, the full capacity, open spaces, the sight lines. How is the proposed floor plan working when you've got a lot of people at a hockey game? And we can see the access to the building is opened up somewhat with display space and views into the space, reorganizing how the ticket booth works and a welcome desk so that when people are coming into the building, they can see beyond into the building and circulate into the building. Most of the people are in the arena here. Some people have gone off to the washrooms that are at a scale that we would expect for this kind of a building and not just 2 or 3 very small washrooms. And then there's a few people milling about in the memorial lounge. Maybe it's between periods in the game, and people are starting to get a few snacks and then go back to their seat in the arena. Yeah, I wanted to point that out. I think that that's a very important point. I meant to mention it earlier, is that one of the ways we're achieving this opening up of sight lines between that memorial lounge and the arena is to take what is currently, if you can see my cursor, there's currently a long, skinny concession that is here. And having gone to a hockey game here and speaking a lot with Robert about how that functions, what we're doing to open up the memorial lounge, the views and the sightlines into the arena, we're taking that concession and we're taking that function and moving it over to the memorial lounge and putting it where we're showing this sort of cafe and bar. And the beauty of that is that it really connects those spaces now visually. We can see from the arena back to the memorial lounge and vice versa, but also it just improves the circulation in the arena itself. When I was at the season opener this year, you know, it's difficult to know who's in line at that concession, who's just walking through or who's just talking to their neighbor. And so there gets this very awkward sort of congested area right here where that concession is. And so for many, many reasons, we're taking that function and that program and we're moving it over to the Memorial Lounge. And as a result, there's all these benefits that happen, opening up sight lines, better circulation in the arena. This is the next slide looks at the proposed plan through the lens of a business conference that is inviting people to town, and the conference is being primarily hosted in the Victoria View. And so in this case, people are arriving, there may be somebody at the welcome desk that is welcoming them and directing them where to go. And in this sort of event in the building, there will be lots of people in the Victoria View room. You can see the scale of the space. There could be a couple hundred people at this corporate event or business conference. And in this case, really the Memorial Lounge is providing a support role. It's that sort of the breakout space within the business conference. It's where you would grab your coffee or your snacks, or you would have that casual interaction with colleagues. And there's also seating around all of these spaces that would really act as the support role. And so you can see the proposed plan by opening up that area that is currently the red floor room and feels quite disconnected and dark, by making it welcoming, introducing seating and tables, a cafe and a bar, and this community table in the middle. It really, really supports larger events like weddings or business conferences happening in the Victoria View room. And I know Robert recently did some renovations to the Victoria View room. And what we really want to do here is make those renovations more viable, make it more of a revenue generating potential by providing the kinds of support spaces that suddenly this becomes a very attractive place for a business conference or a wedding and those kinds of things. The next slide looks at the proposed plan through the lens of more of a day-to-day use. Maybe there's a few families have rented out the kids' rink and the McIntyre room for a birthday, and the gym has been converted into a few pickleball courts. And so in this sort of a day-to-day use, we see people milling about in those areas. Certainly the bathrooms are now at a central location that helps service all of those spaces. There are people still milling about at the front entry to the building, looking at some of the larger scale display that is this two-sided indoor-outdoor display. This central area, the Memorial Lounge, in this case, we've had all the chairs and tables moved out and put into the storage area. There's parents sitting at the glazing, the new windows that are facing into the kids' rink. There are people watching and looking into the pickleball area, and everybody's sort of crossing paths in this middle Memorial Lounge area. And of course, you've got the kids lined up for all their cupcakes and those kinds of things. So we can see that this layout will support, the reason we're looking at it through these different lenses is we want to understand how do these spaces work. Daily use, there's a few people, hockey game, there's tons of people, and then special events. And we can see that in this layout, it seems to support all of those kinds of activities. Next, we'll look at some 3D renderings of what this all means when we're putting it together in sort of a 3D representation of these designs. And so up in the top left, we have and I have just a few minutes, so I'm going to go pretty quick here. A key plan that shows us where these renderings are. This is the front entry hall. And you can see what we've done is we're developing a front entry hall that is bathed in natural light. It is open and it's welcoming. And the way that this is being achieved is opening up this glazed wall that currently exists on the building. It's actually just encased in awnings and plywood. Removing that plywood and those awnings, opening up the height of that wall so that it's at an entry scale that feels appropriate to the building. In the distance here, we can see this lady is looking at that two-sided indoor-outdoor display where you could have large-scale cultural objects, seasonal displays, themed displays. And there's a lot of beautiful natural light coming into the building. And this feels much more appropriate as an entry into the building. It's very welcoming. It's very inviting. This is coming once you've walked through the entry hall and into this sort of central throat of the space. The reason this is an important rendering is that off to the right here, we're catching glimpses into the main arena. Off to the left, we're catching glimpses up these stairs. There's a grade change in the building. Up the stairs, that we actually use the stairs to be community seating and benches, and introducing seating and benches in key spots where people could sit and look into the various program spaces. Beyond, you can actually see glazing and windows. You can see into the kids' room beyond over there. And then you can see also these display surfaces where we're showing large scale graphics of historical moments. In this case, it's one of the world championship smoke eater teams. And beyond, we see the ramp that is integrated into the architecture of the building, as well as lighting that we fully integrated. So here we're trying to express the openness, the open sight lines, and how welcoming it feels when you're presented with a lot of places to sit and to meet with your neighbors and other people using the building. Here we're walking further into that roof and looking down off at the end of this rendering. To the left would be the access into the McIntyre room. And what we're showing here is a ramp where we're looking at doing something interesting with things like guardrails. That can become quite ubiquitous and actually become quite jarring. The current ramp is a bit of an add-on, an afterthought. So we're taking, in this case, just the very common object of a hockey stick and repeating it over and over and over again. And it creates this beautiful pattern that's quite engaging, and it sort of loses its hockey stickness, and it becomes this wonderful surface that can be very engaging for kids to run up and down. It could also become an armature to hold display, to hold lighting, and those kinds of things. And when we look at the video, we really see how it feels to go by. This is looking into one of the display areas, sort of the gallery, one of the gallery spaces, which is at the north end of this throat. Some suggestion of the plinths that would hold objects, and then also the continuation of that ramp that also becomes seating, and also discussing things like materials. We want the material palette to be light. We also want it to be warm and inviting, so we're looking at introducing things like timber into the project where it's appropriate, things like plinths. This is a view in the actual memorial lounge, looking back toward the cafe and bar. You can see a sight line toward the gymnasium beyond. There's some people playing basketball there. This is the nice cafe and bar with this sort of horseshoe U-shape, very social seating around it. In the middle here, we're seeing that community table, which is like a 20-foot long table between existing structural columns, where you meet your neighbor, your friend, and you sit down and you chat and you have a coffee. And then there's also some tables here. And you can see the display surface that we were talking about that wraps around the service core of the bathrooms and the change rooms, and how that really impacts the memorial lounge and it becomes part of that space. Real quickly, because I want to respect the time here. This is looking directly at the cafe and bar and the community table here in the middle. And to give you a sense of, we're trying to be very clean and very open with the space so that it doesn't feel cluttered, it doesn't feel dark. We want it to feel light and inviting. This is in the memorial lounge. If you're sitting at the sort of the cafe space, looking back toward the community table and back toward, you can see the glazing that you would see down into the kids' rink beyond. That's all here. On the left-hand side, we can see the display cases that are facing into the memorial lounge, this community table, and this large-scale graphic that we can start to treat walls as display surfaces. And it really starts to animate that space and to give that space a lot of energy, especially that particular graphic. But it's one of the ways that we want to start looking at how are we treating surfaces? What's our approach toward display space in the memorial lounge? And this is a view in the memorial lounge looking back toward the arena. I want to say that we're not replacing views of the ice. Through the sectional quality of this building, you're going to see into the arena. You will see people milling about, you'll see light, you'll see the structure, but you're not going to come up here to watch the hockey game. You don't want to pull people out of the arena to watch the hockey game. And just the way that sightlines work, you actually won't be able to. You won't be able to sit up at this community table and have a beer and look down and actually watch the game. If you want to see the game, you're going to have to be in the arena. But this gives you a sense of that visual connection to the arena and that makes that. This is a sectional rendering going, this orange line shows you going through the memorial lounge where you can see the kids rink through that glazing there, down through that sort of central circulation growth and into the main arena. So this is really expressing how those spaces relate to each other, how we're seeing in and out of those spaces, and the kind of spaces for seating and gathering. Another, on the top, we have a sectional drawing through the Victoria View Room, the Memorial Lounge, the kids rink, again showing how we're connecting all of these spaces and how they support one another, and how you see activity within those spaces. And down on the bottom image, this is as you come into the building, a new ramp with a guardrail, in this case, using the guardrail as the large floor-to-ceiling graphics that would be semi-transparent, and you'd be able to see people moving in and around. Two more renderings and then a video. This is a rendering as we approach the building on a very slushy, wintry day. And what we're trying to show here is certainly the scale of the proposed canopies, extending the existing canopies out across the sidewalk so that they're really beckoning you, and you can see them as you come down the street toward the building. They're really inviting you to the main doors of the building. This here is the two-sided display, the indoor-outdoor display. Removing the existing awnings that are blocking all of that glass and really opening up that entry to make it at a scale that we see in a recreational facility, making it really inviting. Also exploring materials such as timber in this case to make it feel warm at a human scale. And then also expressing some concept on the south wall of the Victoria View Room, where it might be mural, it might be digital display, it might be some different cladding, but just some approach to as you're coming down or you're leaving the space, you understand that there's a link between this long promenade to the front doors, where the front doors are really announcing their arrival with these large canopies. And then the final rendering is the view of the outside in the evening, where we can really see that how we're opening up that front entryway. And in many ways, this is what we're calling a return to prominence for the building. You can see in this rendering, we took a lot of inspiration from the original expression of the building. We are in many ways in a sort of hearkening back to this glorious past of the building, and not only in its use, but also in its architecture. The original images of this building are very much like this new image is here. We are giving it a bit of a modern taste and a bit of a modern update, but this rendering is actually much truer to the original spirit of the building than when we look at the building. So here we can see a very welcoming entry into what feels like a very prominent building. We've got a video. What do I have to do? Stop. The video is very short. So and the video just walks you through the different spaces, sort of in so you can feel how it would feel to be moving through that kind of a space.
Sorry.
So this is panning out on this important entry. Looking up the stairs and seeing into what would be the memorial lounge. See a gym. It's basic. Walking past the ramp. It's in the Display space, you know, gym is. Past the gym. Thank you.
Thank you. That's awesome. That's so exciting. It's so bright and new and yet the foundation of the building is still there. You know, we're just bringing it back out, back alive again.
Yeah.
And it's awesome. I don't know if council has any questions? Councilor Benson?
Thank you for the presentation. Just wondering, and from seeing it, it looks amazing. But there seems to be a lot more like services that the building would offer with like a memorial lounge and like a conferencing. Would there be a study on the side also to do some type of resourcing plan in terms of human resources and?
Yeah, great question. I think that, like you said, right now, we're just in that stage of, kind of getting a sense of what is the cost.
What would-
I mean,
yeah.
It looks
Okay.
pretty awesome, but,
Yeah.
when we look at what is possible, funding, cost, again, one of the big things is the building code component, right?
Yeah.
So we might get into it and say, actually, we can do this, we can't do
Right.
that, and so there may be some additions. So I would say that right now, just if council's wish is to move forward, just to see what does the next step look like, having that investment, I think those kind of questions are gonna be at your next step.
Okay.
of
Okay.
Getting a sense of, okay, it's gonna cost you X. You talked about, as Mr. Stanley has said, what type of potential is there for having someone use it as a conference center,
Mhm.
and what kind of revenues would it generate, would do anything to help out with the cost of
Right.
of upgrading anything that you said? Do you have someone sitting there and no one comes in? And
Yeah.
how many staff do you have? And
Yeah.
so those are all very good questions to have, but I think just a
Okay.
bit, there are, but just, I think just a bit
See if we
early.
can do it. before
Exactly.
we- okay.
Yes, that would be my advice.
And then my other question, if that's okay, is just on, you mentioned the Trail Historical Society, any other stakeholder engagement with the user groups that, with minor hockey, smoke eaters that use the building?
Yeah, I think that, sort of the stakeholder engagement is a very important first process. We'll just speak openly about what the process has been so far. Robert and Sarah and I have been working very closely on that, and I've been very much sort of relying on not only my own experience of going to the building and seeing the user groups and things there, but also on Robert and Sarah in terms of giving me input of, who are the user groups, what are some of the interests that are within that. But you're absolutely right. As a project moves from these sort of early seeds of inspiration into actually making drawings and how this is going to work, in my mind, are sort of rigorous engagement with different groups. How much space do you need there? And, how many tables do you have?
Right.
All those things.
Okay, thank you.
One primary user group that uses it frequently that will actually see some pretty major disruption is the Trail Make Believe band. There would be
Mhm.
actually the removal of their storage area. There's actually a staircase.
Yeah.
Emergency exit that the plan would actually make that egress accessible to everyone. So where those singular plinths were, it's at that wall right next to the entrance to the McIntyre room. But I understand Robert has engaged with them, and I don't think there's going to be any issue in locating appropriate places for them to store their equipment. It's hard for them to be moving their
For sure.
stuff all over the place. But that is one other key.
Okay.
word.
Thank you, great presentation.
Any other questions? Okay, I just have one quick one before we close it up here. Would we be getting the public input before or after you come back to us with the estimate? Like, when do they come into the picture?
Well, we had discussed that internally, the next step being get a sense of what this cost is. And so there's two components. This is very much a preliminary schematic. There's a more advanced sort of building code analysis that has to happen, especially around things like sprinkler systems and the rating of this class that is being proposed to see into all of these things. Those two items in my mind, without getting into the weeds here, those have fairly significant cost implications. And so what we had thought about doing as the next step would be to get a bit of a building code analysis of what is being proposed here. And then with this preliminary design and with that building code analysis, we could get a Class C estimate. And the Class C estimate is based on a schematic design. It's not based on design development. In a project like this, there would be ongoing estimates as you get to construction.
Mhm.
And so I think that the opportunity to bring in stakeholders is still there, even if we get an estimate at this stage with the preliminary design, based on some of the input from Sarah and Robert in terms of who the stakeholders are. And then there is the opportunity to
Mhm.
continue.
Okay.
And should this project, should there be a decision not to go to the next step, I think the Trail Historic Society would still be coming back to council to explore a shift in direction for that space regardless. There is some upgrading and lighting, as I mentioned, that needs to be done, and security is also an issue with the current locking system. Right. Yeah, and they're ready for a change, and I think that's, for me, the public input piece is key in that aspect for sure.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Counselor Hanson?
Now, with this project, could this be something that could be phased?
Absolutely.
Because, I mean, I'm just seeing dollar signs in my
Yeah,
head,
yeah.
but I'm going, okay, if this is something you can phase, okay, we're gonna work on this wall and do these windows and do this area for this budget, and then we're gonna work on this section, so it could be a phased plan, so it's not such a huge capital hit.
Absolutely, the immediate thought, there was two things. There would be a line at the front entry hall going out, and then a line at the front entry hall going in. In my mind, that would be a logical line to separate two phases of work. That could be two separate budgets, two separate projects. And that would be a logical phasing of the project. And certainly, phasing is something that we can discuss once you see actual numbers. And have an understanding of what is the priority within the project. If the numbers are feeling beyond what council wants to dedicate to, then we can start to pinpoint, okay, what are the salient pieces of this project that we can't let go of, but what are the parts that we could sort of tailor back. But phasing is an obvious choice.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Okay, if there's no other questions, I don't see anybody with their hand up or anything, so thank you guys so much for that presentation, that was wonderful. Good information there.
You can read now?
Yes.
Okay.
Hang out.
We'll let you up to the door.
You can listen to the library presentation.
Watch it then.
Yeah, tripping.
So,
She would.
So our next delegation is from the Thillon District Public Library Board and the library director. We have Jeff Jones and Samantha Murphy.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you
Jeff.
for everybody to join us today. Jeff and myself are going to do a quick update. I'm delighted it's actually been a year since I've been to the youth, believe it or not. So yeah, we're going to focus on 4 main areas of achievement, services, and challenges that we've been facing, as well as present for budget that has been approved by the library board and position as to 2024. In terms of achievement, we've had quite a successful year. Our program yeah, it's been a very successful program year. I'm just going to highlight just a few programs. The photos below are from our open house, which we partnered on the museum with just a few weeks ago. We had approximately 350 people come visit us that day. We had multiple activities, including cookie decorating. We had a chocolate station, various choirs from around the area, as well as a visit from the big man themselves. We're also, over the last few years, have been really working to raise awareness for our entire Indigenous community. We're starting to be well known for our Indigenous arts and culture program. And we're grateful for our partners for those programs, mostly at CBT as well as external operations. This year we held our first seniors wellness fair. It was called Amazing Aging. We partnered with the City of Toronto on that, as well as the Kootenay Seniors and Fair. And we even had someone call last week to see if we were going to be hosting that event again next year. So it was very successful, and recognizing some of the community challenges that we have right now, we're doing our best to host as many mental first aid and workshops as we can. In terms of services, we're on track to have our highest physical and digital circulation to date. So physical circulation would be anything that you check out at the library, from whatever collections like books, DVDs, video games, things like that, and digital circulation of anything that you would check out on our website. Currently, we're sitting at a 17% increase in digital circulation over last year, and we're predicting about 5,000 extra items will be checked out this year over last year. So we're proud of our circulation staff. We've been working on it for the last few years. In terms of challenges, one of our largest challenges right now is actually our physical space. Our main program area only allows for 25 people seated. So for instance, we just had Mother Goose. We had 55 people show up at drop-in programs 2 weeks ago. So we're being forced to host those programs in our collection areas. So for instance, Mother Goose is hosted in the children's collection. Luckily, a lot of that collection is shelved on shelves that are on wheels, so we're able to wheel out and host the program there, which is a very good problem to have. Board capacity, we've had a bit of a challenge. We're trying to recruit some board members, and like other organizations, volunteers, being volunteers is a challenge right now. So thank you for your help with that, Sandy, and we'll continue our search in January. And then our third biggest challenge, which is a challenge for all libraries, is sustainable funding. We've been doing a lot of advocacy for libraries as well as our partners, and we've been quite successful in achieving one-time grants. Unfortunately, the one-time grants are wonderful, but they're not sustainable. And they also come with parameters on how that money can be spent. So I'm extremely grateful that we were in the photo here at UBCM with you guys talking to Anna King about Minister of Finance about sustainable funding for libraries. So we're very grateful for that. And I did have the opportunity to visit with the library director from Roslyn a few weeks ago to go visit in Conroy. Spoke to her about things that we can do for that, and I'll touch upon that more. In terms of budget, I did touch upon this last time I was here, how we go about creating the budget. I'll just go over it really briefly. At first, we create an operations plan. So the operations plan guides the budget process. It's created with input from staff as well as our patrons. And essentially, it lists all of our important projects and program strategic priorities. An example would be our RFID conversion that's currently happening, as well as our Noble Branch locker installation that's going to be happening in this mall. We have to make sure the plan is flexible, so they can easily navigate changes, as well as we want to be able to easily align with council priorities, as well as partner projects, and with the city as well as our other stakeholders. So in terms of budget, this year is a bit unique because it's bringing, with the exception, so it's a bit of an exception for previous years as well as, future years. We are not asking for an increase this year, and a lot of that is due to, we're not asking for increase over what we asked for last year. And a lot of that is due to the additional one-time funding that we've received from the province. Other funding sources, we're really hoping to receive more revenue from our operations grant from the government this year, as well as you'll see under deferred grant funding. There's a considerable amount of money there, deferred grants from 2022 and 2023. And all of those grant funding, all that money is earmarked for different projects, which are all listed, and each one will be listed in my report. So a few other updates with that grant money for next year. We're hoping to improve the children's area a little bit to make it more accessible for our programming needs, as well as create a new smaller programming space upstairs on our second floor. So all of the Riverfront Central partners will be able to benefit from those renovation projects. This year we also implemented a 10-year capital replacement plan. Because we've been so fortunate to have, we've had a lot of grant funding the last few years, we've been able to obtain a lot of great technology, furniture, things like that. We just want to ensure in the future that, you know, purchasing of replacement purchases of those items doesn't fall on the municipality. So we put that in place as well. And again, a lot of this is very brief because I do send you guys in quarterly reports, and I'm always happy to come and visit you for 5 minutes quarterly if it helps to give you an update. We have a lot going on. We're a busy little place. Yeah, so please feel free at any time to reach out with your questions. I don't know if you want to add anything.
Thanks. First of all, express my appreciation to Sam, who just does a masterful job with our library record, and we appreciate you so much. And thank you to council for your ongoing support. So like we said, it was a year ago, we've just been elected, we met here, and I think we were your first delegate. We felt pretty special. As you know, and as you've seen in your work as a city council, the library continues to play a central role in our community. And one of the things that we're trying to do is be future oriented, recognizing, and I'm sure you've heard it all over the place, that the role of libraries is evolving and changing, and when we're trying to be ahead of that. And so I think we're doing quite well from that perspective. You can see the number of programs that are posted at the library. It isn't just a place where people drop in to read. People come in to socialize, to find a place of comfort, to find a place that's warm, find a place to learn, find a place to reflect, and to meet. So the opportunity that Sam has brought now for us to continue expansion into the community with essentially lockers, book lockers at the mall, and eventually Warfield, expand our services and our reach in further and deeper into the community. So I think that as a council, your continued support is absolutely required, but more than that is appreciated, because certainly I personally see the work of the library as being fundamental to success in the community.
Anybody have any questions for Jeff or Samantha?
Can you tell us more about the novel lockers at the mall?
Oh, that would be very much. It looks like a vending machine, but it'll have library books in it. So say if you want to place a hold on an item, you'll be able to pick which location you'd like to pick it up at. You can return your library books to the vending machine as well. So because we have RFID, it's sort of a seamless transaction. So yeah, it's a library vending machine essentially. They're starting to pop up in subway stations, things like that in larger cities. So yeah, sort of the new wave of.
Sorry, what is an FID? Is that like the barcoding
RFID?
system?
Yeah, it's it's essentially, it's a tag system.
Oh, like an RFID. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, okay,
Yeah.
yeah, cool.
Counselor Hanson.
So two questions. So one is, on there, your report there was, the revenue generators to the library was around $9,600. What are those? And is there any opportunity for expansion of other revenue generators?
So primarily that is a lot of copying fees, things like that. We have some random miscellaneous things in the gift shop. We are looking at expanding our copier services by getting another large print copier. For next year, we're having a bit of challenges getting it integrated into the system. I mean, there's always a possibility that we could expand the miscellaneous items and stuff we have in the gift shop and have more merchandise revenue. Something else that used to, going fine free, we used to have our funds and stuff in there as well. So there is other possibilities. It's not a huge revenue
Yeah. And then the other question is, and maybe this is just me not knowing, Warfield is part of the library, but what about Montrose? Are they connected with Beaver Valley, like Whisper Vale?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so they're still able to use our library in a smaller capacity.
Okay, thank you.
And it's also one source of revenue, people from outside of the region for the library can pay to have membership in the library.
Oh,
Yeah, we currently this year we've generated about $1,500, and people from outlying areas paying to be able to utilize the library.
Oh, Mr. McLaren had a question.
No, not a question. I just wanted to say, thanks to Director Murphy. She's been patient with me as I've kind of rolled into my position, and working with her. One of the things that's been, she kind of talked about it as council was has been down at UPCM because the funding basically has been frozen for the grants for, I think, 12 years. It could be no longer actually. Now they have given out, like you said, the grants, but it does put a lot of pressure on Director Murphy because now she needs to have each year how much has she spent, and again it keeps coming. So now it's a spreadsheet after spreadsheet. So us working together to make sure that we are accounting for it at year end and that she's got the funding going forward. So that's been taking some work, but we're really improving the finance relationship between the library and the city, and that's been very positive. And I just wanted to let you know, because Warfield does not have its own library. That's the reason that the rest of them kind of have at least a smaller type of library, maybe in the Fruitvale area, that then services that group. So then therefore they're not part of what you would usually see a larger area saying, hey, this is the main place. And it's one of the things also we've talked about with the province is that, like, if you have, even if it's a very small library, then you've got the one card. It's like, oh, we have a library, now we can go to any library. But of course, they're not very far, but they're not really providing the type of service at this library, right? So, but now you have some of them got the one they can take things out, but they're not sort of funding it the way that, say, our partner in Warfield is to be, with us. They're sort of getting some benefit without sort of some of the support. But again, we continually walk and work with our partners and try to make sure that that's something that we can change. And as Director Murphy is saying, that we're now starting to see some people getting a membership and kind of providing some revenue.
That's great.
Jeff, you had a comment on that?
A conversation that I think we could propose for future time is the notion of regionalizing the library services, both to our benefit and benefit of the smaller communities around us, because we do coexist and services are being shared. Is there benefit to us, for example, the Trail and District Public Library being more engaged with the regional perspective of libraries? That's just something we tossed around.
Any other questions or comments? No? Okay. Thanks, you guys.
Thank you, Jack. Hey, by the way,
Yeah.
but good choice. I'm sure any one of you would be the choice. Next week.
You got 3 more years.
Oh, thank you guys.
Struggling because people doesn't see the value in it. Really.
Mm.
I've been very fortunate over the last few years as council reps to get involved. And so we're very grateful.
We feel very, very.
Yeah.
I was gonna say the word blessed, but I think very well. Okay.
Thanks,
By
you
all
guys.
accounts.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Item number 2, some finance. So we have before you the Trail Memorial Center Memorial Lounge Systemic Design Review. The recommendation is before you. Can I have someone make that motion? Councillor Hanson? Is there a seconder? Councillor Martin? Any questions or comments or, okay? All those in favor? Carried unanimously. And the next item on the agenda is the workstation replacement purchase. Mr. McClure, did you want to talk about that before we move down?
Just a couple of things. Now, again, as we start back into the new budget, this is something that will get carried forward into 2024 because we're not going to get that by the end of the year. One of the things that I think is important is that what we're proposing here is within budget. And my expectation is that as we work on our procurement policy and our budget, is that we will put in place that items of these, once they're approved, they would just sort of flow on a natural thing. Now, again, if the budget came in, it was $100,000 over that, have to bring it back. But kind of bringing something back which you've already kind of passed in principle, sort of, I'm not sure if it's the best use of time of both council and staff, but that's a conversation for the future. And because we are bringing this forward because this is the practice and how the current procurement policy reads.
Any questions for Mr. McClure before we put the?
Just a question on, what is your normal, like, was it a 4 years, that 2017? Or when was the previous, like?
Refresh, my
Refresher.
understanding is that it is every 4 years.
4 years, okay.
Yes, and I think that we will see that when we look at the budget breakdown, because we usually have on IT, you'll see the kind of the ups and downs and then
Right.
what the replacement is, but yes. But I can follow up. on
And
that for
then
sure.
do we recycle the?
Yeah, sometimes we sell them, sometimes
Okay.
they're not worth
Oh.
anything, sometimes they don't make it available for basically staff first, and then from there we can trickle off, but again, as you can imagine with IT products, after 4 years, there's unfortunately, and that's why again, those great things with tech that you're allowed to recycle.
Yeah.
Right? So it's one
Yeah,
positive
that's
of
great.
having that in our community.
Okay, so the recommendation includes 50 computer laptops, right? Is that for?
50 desktops, yeah,
Okay,
yeah, and then we've got the surfaces, which is sort of the ones that
Mhm.
have here.
okay,
Other graphic cards that are involved. Mostly that would be for people that are using the GIS system or different items that need that higher power to view diagrams and those sorts of things, maps.
okay. So the recommendation is before council. Is there someone that wants to make that motion? Councillor Benson, Councillor Wilson, seconded. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And grants and aid sponsorship, the Boxing Day Classic, request for donation, and I believe that we are leaving it up to council to decide if they want to do the donation and what it looks like. Ms. Lucchini, did you want to speak on this?
Just that for several years since the inception of the event, council has supported the raffle table with the provision of $250 gift certificates from the pool. So this will continue or change the amount? It's a very, it's
Yeah,
a nice.
It's
event.
nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Jerry.
actually proposed we actually increase
Yeah.
Maybe small. Well attended.
So Counselor Butler, did you make a motion?
I was just going to
Oh, sure.
suggest that we raise it to $200.
Okay,
Feel Christmas.
Counselor Benson, you second it? Okay, all those in favor? Carried, thank you.
Just all the money goes to charity that we used to.
It does. And may I have a motion for adjournment, please? Counselor Butler, Counselor Hampton, all those in favor?
For the kids.
Carried unanimously, thank you.